Buenas tardes, amigos. Good evening. My name is Valdemar Rodriguez. I'm the manager of community partnerships at Alley Theater, and I would love to welcome each and every one of you to our community panel discussion series, Cuentos y Charlas. El día de hoy, esta tarde, we are going to be talking with some wonderful community leaders as well as community storytellers that have taken part in our Primer Borrador, which is our first draft residency, storytelling residency over the summer. We are super excited to hear from these folks. But before we talk a little bit about the different stories and the scope of what we're going to listen tonight, I would like to bring on my co-host and moderator, Ms. Claudia de Champs. Please help me welcome Claudia de Champs.
First of all, thank you so much for inviting me, Valdemar. This is a really great honor to be part of this initiative and to talk about something that we hardly hear about, right? Because we've grown up with all these elements. It's part of our cultura, but yet it's something that sometimes we don't feel so open, or we don't feel so free to talk about it because it's not, the reception sometimes it's not. If it's outside of your family, they might see you strange. So thank you for inviting me.
I wanted to bring you back to your anchoring and reporting days back with Univision and Telemundo. So glad to have you. Claudia de Champs has been a very loyal supporter at Alley Theater and the Social Advisory Committee. And we are excited to have her. And today we're going to, again, guide the conversation. So Claudia, as you know, we've been, over the summer, we started a book club where we've been reading Rodolfo Anaya's celebrated book called Bless Me Ultima. Now, Bless Me Ultima talks about a young boy, a 7-year-old boy, Antonio, who has the dilemma of deciding what he wants to be when he grows up, or what he wants to be as a young boy, moral independence. And so this book was read by, we had 12 different book clubs across the city of Houston in the Harris County areas. And these participants from Primer Borrador read the book as well, and they were inspired to write their story based or inspired by this book. So you read the book. What did you think about it?
I thought it was, the book is very inspiring because it tells a story about a boy who is fighting within his own identity. He knows that his parents want him to be a priest, but yet he's drawn into this culture and into the circumstances when the lady is brought in, the curandera, the healer, somebody who's very revered by his family is brought in to live with him. And thanks to what he experiences, that's how he's able to discern. She's an element for his discernment. So I thought it was very powerful.
Exactamente, este niño de 7 años, como estamos comentando, tiene la dilema de obviamente, de elegir qué quiere ser. La mamá quiere que sea un agricultor, ¿verdad? Y el papá quiere que sea un caballero. Y el niño quiere ser un sacerdote. Entonces, yes, he has the dilemma of choosing to be a farmer, to be a rancher, or to be a priest. And at 7 years old, this is such a dilemma where the kids have to decipher, by their experiences. Now, yes, la curandera Ultima comes and visits, and so he gets an opportunity to shadow her. That's the reason that she comes in this book. That's the reason she comes back 7 years, because she was the midwife that brought him into life 7 years ago.
De todos.
De todos, sí.
Al mundo a todos.
So viene ella, entonces el niño has a connection. And so now this young boy is witnessing so many different things, like so many of our kids, us right there. Yeah. And so before we go, you tell me a little bit in a nutshell, a curandera story. It's not
a curandera story, but I can tell you that, being born in Mexico, being brought up in Mexico, we see it all the time. We see it all the time and we live it. I guess like the most prominent story. And it's not a curandera, but when I had small children, we used to take them out to the supermarket, obvio, anywhere. Ay, qué lindo el niño, qué lindo el niño. So they would, that's something that I would repeat because that's what I saw all the time. My husband and I would tell the people, tóquelo. Sí. Tóquelo porque tanta energía. Sí. So they come back home so charged with energy,
Yeah.
that they're frantic and they are. So the energy is something that, by the measure with which people touch, as long as it's with good intentions, and usually they are, then it transfers the energy. Another one is the hiccups. I kid you not, I saw it and I didn't believe it. Pero si le ponen un hilo, a red thread, con un poquito de saliva, se lo ponen acá al niño, así se les quita el hipo. And trust me, I witnessed it.
That's interesting. So you're talking about the hiccups, and a tradition or cultural tradition was that if a young boy has or a young person has a hiccup, or anybody who's got a hiccup, you get a red thread, and you put it with saliva, right?
Claro.
With your saliva, and you put it up here, and then all of a sudden the hiccups. So next time I get the hiccups, it's either because I'm lying or something. But I'm gonna try that. I've never heard of that. But the other part that you're talking about cuando llevas a los niños, when you take your child out into the grocery store, they're so cute and everything. And oh, they're so cute. They look at it and they admire. You know, yes, my mom would always tell the lady, like your mom did, or you do your kids, oh, can you please touch my son? Because
tóquelo. The energy transfers, and I don't know how to explain it, but I did see the difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And it also comes in our beliefs. You know, it plays into our beliefs and how we grow with. Y eso para que no nos hagan ojo. And that's another thing. Yeah. We'll talk a little bit about that later. But so we are excited because, as you know, this is a wonderful book that we have read, that the community has read, that this Primer Borrador's first draft storytelling residency participants have read. And so now, in order to help us guide the conversation, because as you had mentioned, Claudia, you mentioned the fact that these cultural traditions sometimes, you know, we also are either ashamed or embarrassed to talk about it or what have you, because it may not go hand in hand with our religion, and it may not go hand with the beliefs of, let's say, the crowd that we're in, the families that we're in, the kids. And so we want to go ahead and bring in two wonderful community leaders. We have a mental health expert, and we also have a director of children's ministry from Bear Creek United Methodist. They're joining us so that they can help us guide the conversation. So please help me welcome both Blanca Garza and Susie Morales.
So once again, welcome to Blanca Garza and Susie Morales. So I would like to decirles bienvenidas a este programa y a esta oportunidad de hablar de estas cosas que son tan partes de nuestra cultura. And so I'm interested in hearing your perspective one by one, whoever wants to take it first. Blanca, I'm sure you've seen it. I'm sure some of your clients might have shared some of their experiences with curanderismo, with natural healings, home remedies, however you want to call it. What do you tell them, and how ingrained is it still in our culture?
Yes, I mean, it is something that comes up, and that's why this book was so interesting, because I think also living in the United States, it's a little different. It's sort of like some of the culture has been maybe not completely lost, but there is an identity perhaps around it that they're trying to identify with, that they're trying to belong, acknowledging it. Should they, shouldn't they? I mean, it's some of the themes that, even come up in the book with Antonio, where he's kind of torn between, it seems like, the curanderismo and maybe the priesthood and the religion. And so it's like, kind of, where do you find a fine line between those two? And so that's something that we experience, a lot in this country, certainly.
So for Susie, what is your perspective? Because what you work with, being in a children's ministry inside of a church, it puts things in a whole different level. Mm-hmm. Just because I think every church, and I'm not talking denominational, I'm talking every church has its own identity, its own culture. So tell us about at United Methodist Church, what is the approach when you encounter children who share these stories with you?
Hi, everyone. Well, I thought this topic was so important for me because these subject matters are very taboo in the church. Even though we've been raised around them, we've seen our grandmothers, our aunts dear people to us practice them. And so for me, looking at the story and the content, it's important to open the conversation, and understand not only the audience, the our parishioners who we're working with, but also directly with the children. And I was a child who had those experiences. I was a child who asked those questions, and so sometimes we tend to want to take a step back and maybe, oh, you're not ready for this, or perhaps I don't know how to say this, and we don't know all the answers. But I think it's just important to be able to open up the conversation. And I always see it as the audience. So whether you're the person that's telling the story, delivering the information, or the person that's receiving it, and being able to be aware of where the other person is coming from. So you don't have to have the same beliefs, as we have a wide range of beliefs within our culture, but be willing to open and listen open-heartedly.
So if I hear you correctly, we're talking tolerance. There is a tolerance from your church and from the church, from the culture that you belong to, where you receive the children. There is a tolerance in letting them talk about it and listening to them.
Oh, yes. Children. I mean, I have an audience weekly of anywhere from 20 to 30 children, and they will ask these deep questions of death. They will ask these deep questions of the dreams that they're having. And so I think another thing to keep in mind, I don't know that the church is necessarily at a place of tolerance. I do believe that we can't have a blind eye to say, this is something that we're going to talk about in the church. But I do believe that as leaders and children as well as parents look to the church. And so why not have these conversations with people that have some experience, some information? At our church, we make it a point to look at the psychological development, the emotional, and just the academic development of a child in order to view them holistically and prepare them in their spiritual formation, because all of those are integrated into the raising of a child.
You know, and I think it's so fascinating because for us Hispanics, those of us who've been born in Mexico, Central or South America, and those who, you know, might not have been born over there, but who have been brought up by Mexican parents or Latin American parents, it's part of our culture. We grew up listening to stories, having experiences, and probably having tias, tíos, abuelos, who talked about it openly, and who, so I think it's very interesting how no matter when, years will go, many years to come, we're always going to have that as part of our identity as Hispanos, as Latinos.
Yes, and I agree with you. Those of us that had, that we were raised in our países, in our countries, obviously, we were able to openly talk about these scenarios. Now, I'm thinking when we came here as young kids, nos importaba un comino because we didn't know the repercussions of talking about this or talking about that. But as we got older and we started, sharing this in other, people would just look at you like, what is that? What are you talking about?
Yeah, there was a hesitation. I think that it wasn't until I was in high school or even college, rather college, because high school I was in Mexico, so we lived there with that, right? But in college, I started feeling, nobody told me, but I could tell that mejor con cuidado, con más discreción. I had to be a little bit more discreet.
Sí. Well, we're going to go ahead and bring in our very first storyteller. And I'll tell you in a second the name of the story that she wrote. And it's so wonderful. And it actually, te da tristeza, pero más que todo te da alegría, it sounds like a made-up story, right? But in actuality, these are stories that happen to us that are very true to us. So I'd like to go ahead and bring our friend up, and I'll tell you she's momentarily. That way we can hear a little bit about what her story is, the title of her story, and also for us to chime in, of course, just, recognizing her for her courage. Because a lot of these folks, whenever we did, just as I tell you, a lot of these community participants that came in, when we first started talking, there was some hesitation. There was some hesitation. What story am I going to write? Blah, blah, blah. So I kind of pretty much said, look, we want these stories to be your stories, what you grew up with, your culture, your traditions. So as we started going through the lessons, they on their own decided the story. So without any further ado, we're going to welcome our very first amiga. Her name is Maria Josie Robles Hinojosa. Please help me welcome Miss Maria Josie. Bienvenida, Josie.
Hi,
¿Cómo
buenas
estás?
tardes. Good to be here.
Awesome, awesome. Well, before we go any further, in a nutshell, tell us who Maria Josie Robles is.
Well, I'm a mother first. I'm a community advocate, volunteer. I like to support our community causes. We have lots of family, lots of people to learn from. That's basically me.
Awesome. Well, let me just tell you that everything that you've mentioned, I've witnessed. I've known you for many years, and it's amazing. You're a true community artist and advocate for artists and our community, nuestra gente. So once again, welcome. So now queremos ir al grano. Let's just start by sharing with us the title of your Primer Borrador, and then Claudia has a couple of questions for you.
Awesome. The name of my story is The Banana Healer.
The Banana Healer.
The Banana Healer.
And so the banana healer, the name is very telling, but this is a story that happened to you when you were a child, and it had to do with the element of a banana as an instrument for healing. So I don't want to tell the whole story, but if you can recap for us in a nutshell, what happened to you?
Okay, so I was very young, like the age of Antonio in Bless Me Ultima, close to his age. Something that happened to me, I was in a pickle. I was being mischievous at school, and I needed some healing, so to speak. And a very good friend of mine's grandmother was available to offer it. And it was something I was not used to. It's very unconventional to me at the time. And she helped me through it.
So there's a point in your story in which you talk about something slimy and just not pleasant, it being around your body, being around your feet. What was it, and how did it make you feel?
So it was a banana peel. It was toasted, kind of charred, and I woke up to it. And so at that age, we don't want anything icky or gooey, anything near us. And so I was not having it. I just did not feel comfortable with that.
Pues me sonrío y porque me da gracia, but it's as a young person going through that process, that ritual, because it's a ritual, it's a cultural ritual, but let me just say something. As a young boy, I would have been all over that.
However, and I think for the audience to know what happened to you, you got close to being electrocuted, right?
Yes, so that was the pickle I got myself in, and I was being curious as a young child, and like most children are at that age, I was curious, and so I had a little science project on my own, and it did not go well, and so I was sent to get some rest and try to recoup, and I was very much affected by what happened, in both physically and spiritually. So that's again, without saying the entire story, that's basically what happened.
Pues, it's an amazing story, and again, I want to just make a reflection. The reactions that people have, there's some people that are incredulous. incredulous, and to unos que le dan gracia, like me. I just, whenever I heard the story, I laughed, but I was like, that is so true. These are things that we go through, and that we don't know, we don't second turn or second guess. So let's go ahead and ask Blanca Garza, our mental health expert, to tell us. You've already heard her story as a 7-year-old young girl. What did you spend? What is your reflection on this story?
Yeah, yes, I had a chance to read your story, Josie, and yes, I mean, I think part of what is going on. It's also a grounding for you. I mean, being electrocuted, you can only imagine. But the fact that it was so when I think in the healing processes, it's not just the element of the banana. It's like the bigger picture, so to speak, with the healer, and that she knew you, or you knew her. So there's an element also of caring and love that goes with that. She was caring for you when your mother wasn't around, right? So I think that has a lot to do with the processes. So it's very sensory. Probably all of your senses certainly were coming back into you and who you are. So a lot of times if there's a susto, or if there's a fright, what to heal the person, you have to come back into your body. And so a lot of these are grounding elements that would help you in that way. So there's a lot of somatic work that goes into these healings. So I mean, that's kind of my perspective of it.
Thank you, Blanca Garza. Ahora, Susie, as this kind of story, as a young person, telling it back there, because I'm certain that when it happened, she went and told her friends and at school, and and told her cousins or whatever. What kind of impact does this have nowadays? If young kids go through that situation and they want to share that with their friends, and then they come back out ridiculed or bullied because of this or that. What recommendations, or what is your take on this?
I think a lot of times we want to fix things. And as adults or parents, we want to jump in and try to make it okay and give the right words. And I always go back to that audience listening. Let's listen and validate those emotions and allow the child to process that. And processing that means having those deep emotions if they're going to cry, and if acknowledging if there's anger too. Those are important. What's interesting about the connection between Josie's story and Antonio's at their age, in the development at this age, there is this tug between the literal and the what can be called mythical, right? There's that make believe, and there's that, and so taking their experience of whatever items they have, and in this case it was the banana peel, and then using their experiences with it. It's almost like a scientist, right? You're testing, will this work, what will happen? And so we see that in her story, and we see that in Antonio's, as he's gathering, or both gathering, their experiences and making meaning out of it. And that's what children are looking for. And so sometimes the discovery is not that great, or is not accepted by their peers. And so as adults, then we have an opportunity to participate in that, and not necessarily do it for them, because we tend to do that as parents, right? The science project comes home, and I mean, you see those perfect science projects, and you know who the kids did it, and who it was that was the parent that did it, right? And so I think as for that, in terms of like, okay, allowing the children to use their experiences, and to also allowing those experiences to form part of what they will use, because they will take the past and use it in the future, that will help them process. But I think that's one of the things that we can do as adults, as teachers or leaders, is listen and help them process that and acknowledge those.
No, I'm interested in listening to your perspective. I think we can look into what are the properties of the banana, how much potassium does it have. I mean, we can try to find the reasons why that healing and that what Josie went through, why it was healing. But I think that besides the fact that these natural and all these elements that are used in natural healing, curanderismo, or however we want to call it, a part of having properties, actual properties, I think there's a lot of intention. Unlike medicines, if you go to, I'm not going to say the name of a pharmacy, but if you go to any pharmacy, it doesn't have the same intention. I always have believed that natural remedies are effective partly because of the properties, the natural properties that they have, but also because of the immense, invaluable intention that they have behind them, especially when they are administered by someone who knows what she's doing.
Sí, no, y quiero regresar un poquito. Primero, that's correct, cosas naturales que tienen ya la energía de nuestra madre tierra, ¿verdad? Eso son muy importantes, que las hierbas, que los tés y todo eso. Voy a regresarme un poquito para explicarle un poquito a la gente de habla hispana que lo que estaba diciendo Susi Morales, de que cuando un niño, la historia de Josie, que vino y que le dieron burla o no le creyeron, lo que sea, que que nosotros como padres deberemos dejarlos que se enojen o que vengan alegres o contentos o enojados o frustrados y que ellos traten de arreglar eso, de entender lo que está pasando y obviamente para que ellos mismos puedan madurar. Y nosotros estar ahí como padres allá al lado de ellos para poder ayudarlos y auxiliarlos, pero no realmente hacer, como le dicen, el experimento de ciencia, ¿verdad? Ellos tienen que procesar eso, decir, bueno, pues hoy se burlaron, mañana se van a olvidar, mañana nos vamos a burlar de otro chamaco que algo le pasó a esto. Así somos los niños, pero es muy importante dejarlos a ellos llegar y que suelten su emoción. Y si vienen a llorar, pues que lloren, no les digan, no estés llorando, hazte fuerte y que no te duela. No, tenemos que darles ese permiso para que ellos puedan procesar la experiencia que Josie tuvo a los 7 años, que Antonio en el libro tuvo a los 7 años.
So I'm interested in hearing from Josie. Josie, how did it feel afterwards? I mean, did it help? Did it work? What happened?
Yeah, I really believe that it did help. I wasn't acting the same way prior to her administering that healing. I was much calmer. I was not scared anymore. I felt good to go home. Once I got home, I felt great. I do think it did make a difference.
Wonderful. Well, that's great. I want to let everybody know out there in our virtual mundo that the story, the banana healer, Josie will be sharing her story live at Alley Theater, the New House Theater in downtown next Friday, September the 16th at 7 o'clock. We're going to have all these storytellers, all these participants from Primer Borrador, the first draft residency, come up and share those wonderful stories. So we don't want to take any more, Josie. Thank you so much. We'd like to invite you to stay backstage in the green room. We can invite you in a little bit to have final thoughts. But so thank you so much, Josie, for joining us.
Thank you too.
So, Susie and Blanca, wow, this is wonderful to be able to hear their story, a little bit of the story, y luego reflexionar y darle like what we think of what that story is.
Well, especially because both Susie and Blanca, I am sure in your practice you encounter it very frequently. Is that correct?
Yes, certainly. Yes. I mean, things do come up. People do have questions, certainly around that. And, what sometimes it comes down to is like, what happened with Josie is that, even her feeling understood, her feeling not alone, her feeling validated in what had happened. So it's like that is all part of it. It's not like dismissive, that's part of the ritual. So that is also very, very helpful, and why it continues today to be something that is widely practiced.
Pues muchísimas gracias por esa reflexión y esa esa observación y esos comentarios a ustedes dos, a Susi Morales y Blanca Garza. Muchísimas gracias. Ahora vamos a invitar, we're going to invite our next Primer Borrador participant. Esta señorita, she's a photographer, she's a early child development teacher, and she's an artist, and she has an amazing story that takes place in el cementerio. So please help me welcome the wonderful Lorena Castillo. Bienvenido, Lorena, ¿cómo estás?
Hola, muy bien, un placer ser parte de este proyecto Primer Borrador.
Pues fue un placer tenerte y fue un placer verte cómo desarrollaste, how you developed the story from the first start process, porque tenías varios, you had several ideas for the story, and then when you honed it on this, it was amazing to see you develop it and now what it has become today. So compártenos con nosotros. Tell us who is Lorena, and then tell us a little bit about the name of the story, and then we can jump into the story.
Bueno, yo soy, primero que nada, soy un emigrante mexicano que vive en este país desde hace 23 años. Y después de haber vivido aquí por 10 años, me convertí en maestra y tengo 13 años enseñando a niños en educación preescolar. Y bueno, sí, como tú mencionaste, tengo un amor especial por la fotografía y por la escritura.
Pues genial, pues lo desarrollaste muy bonito. A ver, platíquenos, porque Claudia...
A mí me gustó mucho tu historia, Lorena, porque un poquito yo me vi reflejada. A mí también, sin platicar toda la historia, por ahí experienced something very similar. Y hay algo muy místico acerca de los panteones, especialmente en nuestros países. Allá todavía existe el arte, existen las ofrendas, no es lo minimalista que es aquí, que solamente en muchos panteones solamente ves las placas con los nombres y las fechas. Entonces hay algo muy, but just like you, when I would be taken to the cemetery, nadie me decía antes, te tienes que portar así o te tienes que portar asado. So to me, it was just like you described your journey, that you didn't walk too far from your mom, but you were exploring.
Platícanos, el título de tu historia, tell us the title of the story, and then tell us a little bit about that story.
Sí, el título es Desasombro, porque yo no sabía de hecho que se llamaba así este mal que a mí me dio a causa de no respetar la tranquilidad y el descanso de los muertos en el cementerio. Eso no lo dijo la señora con la que mi mamá me llevó para que nos ayudara a sentirme mejor, porque después de haber estado allí, pues yo estuve experimentando ciertos dolores y sueños que no me dejaban en paz. Entonces mi mamá sabía con quién llevarme, pero yo no sabía cómo se llamaba ese mal, y resulta que preguntándole ya después de 30 y tantos años a mi mamá, dijo, eso se llama desasombro. Es cuando los muertos se te meten en los sueños y no te dejan dormir, no te dejan en paz, hasta que el trabajo de una persona que sabe de esos males, sabe cómo curarlos, y hasta entonces esta señora me ayudó a deshacerme de sus males. Entonces se llama desasombro.
Y aquí de regreso volvemos al tema de la energía. Muchas personas pensarían que te impresionaste y que te sugestionaste, Pues yo verdaderamente pienso que hay una energía muy sagrada en los cementerios y que de alguna manera te estaban dejando saber, mijita, así como que te dieron una palmadita, nos perturbaste, no nos respetas, no se juega en el cementerio. Pero sin embargo, tu mami sabía dónde llevarte y con quién.
Claro, claro que sí. Y eso fue lo que me ayudó a liberarme de ese. Y a respetar desde ese día, desde esa ocasión en adelante, a respetar el descanso de los muertos.
Pues lo voy a refrescar en inglés. This wonderful story, as kids, we, in my household, when all the kids got together, we went out to the park or anywhere, even the cemetery. Ahí andamos correteando, we were running all over. That's what kids do. That's what Our family did, and not that we didn't respect the cemetery, but it's like jumping on the, it's looking at the plants and running here, running there, just to feel it's interesting for those that have not been there in the day. At night, es otra cosa. So what you're telling us right now in the story, Lorena, is that you went there one day with your mom and your grandma, and you were just like a normal young person running all over the place, and did you actually awoken and disturbed la gente, the folk that had already passed to a better life, and that triggered nightmares. That triggered nightmares. For a young person to have those nightmares, it's sometimes we don't know where they come from, but tu mamá o tu abuelita te llevaron, they took you to go see someone that obviously could would be able to what do you call it? Identify what this is, right? And then que se llama desasombro, right?
Desasombro, de curarte, de sanarte, de tranquilizarte y de alguna manera también de dejarle saber a esos espíritus, a esas almas, que todo estaba bien y que no hubo una mala intención. Yo creo que también hubo un trabajo ahí un poco de reconciliación, por así decirlo.
Ahora, Blanca Garza, ¿qué es tu toma? What is your take on hearing this one story, a young person? How many of us as kids had nightmares for things that happened, things that we did or we didn't do or what have you? Tell us your reflexión.
Well, yes. I mean, I certainly, dreams are very powerful. And it even comes up in the Bless Me Ultima. There are a lot of dreams that he has that he's trying to work through and reconcile through and make meaning of. And I think in Lorena's story, she has, of course, these. I mean, it's like a series of events. But one of the things that I found really interesting in her story is how the curandera kind of brings her back, sort of into her body, like calls her back. And what I might associate that to, or it's sort of like somebody called it PTSD, but it may be also a dissociation. Like a feeling of dissociation within yourself because of the fear and because of the healer helps you with her process also in coming back to yourself. So I think that's one way to kind of look at it and think about it. And it's with the elements. You think about the rocks or crystals that are used, and that those hold energy. I mean, that's widely believed. Also the herbs that are used now, nowadays we use essential oils, it's very but it's still herbs. So those are all earth elements that you can think of that kind of bring you back to yourself and to who you were. So I think those are things that I thought about as I read your story.
Susie Morales, what is your perspective? Coming and looking at it from the religious angle, what do you think about the story?
I think it gives us a lot of opportunities to just have this discussion about the different beliefs and the diversity of those beliefs that we have. I think part of where my leadership turns toward is helping the child or that person process that. And yes, you could use the elements, but within our faith too, we in our culture have God as a center, have our faith as a center of everything we do. And so recalling how we can use the higher power, the higher force to help us overcome these challenges. So for example, in this case, if I'd had to talk to a family about it, then what are some options? And for us, it's, we talk about the, Blanca brought up the elements, there's the stones, there's all these things. And we bring it back to say, well, yeah, our faith in God, well, God is our cornerstone. God is in the air. He's in the presence. So the breath that we take in is the very presence of God. And so taking that from the aspects of what is our cultural heritage and what is our faith heritage to help process this, and then using our prayers to guide the families, because I know that some of those rituals, there are prayers, there are chants that go along with those, and then there's a connection to the transcendent being of God, who is the mover of all things, who guides us and helps us to heal. In this case, it might have been something within mystical, beyond that we don't understand. We cannot say we have all the answers and we know exactly every order of how God works. But what we can say is, at least in our tradition, and those of us that hold to the faith, the religious faith tradition, to say, yeah, God is present and God could help us through those situations too.
And I think that's one of the reasons why churches are so powerful, especially churches that have children's ministries, because you do the hand holding for children who might be experiencing these types of situations, and then you bring them in. Ministries like yours are able to guide the child through. And what I hear is that these are not two separate things. If you were to encounter a child with a situation similar to that of Lorena, it wouldn't be antagonic. It would be the two of them could coexist, right? As long as you said, there is God as the cornerstone.
And I think that that's what's important. Going back to, I believe it was you, Claudia, who said the intention behind it. As parents, we have to understand when we are subjecting our children to a prayer, a simple prayer. It doesn't even have to be anything else. Understanding what we're doing, why we're doing. And sometimes we don't have those conversations with ourselves or sometimes with our significant partner. But when we do, then we can get to the core of why this prayer is important, why this practice that we're doing. And instead of it just becoming religion, because religion are the rituals that take place. And that's different from faith. Faith is the commitment we have to a transcendent meaning of that higher power. And so my faith will impact me as a person and the actions I have. And then I no longer see myself as an individual, but as an individual within a whole community. So those things are really important as we're helping families guide. And I think it's also important to not be dismissive. And I think sometimes the church can be that, because we're not taking the time to understand our community, our communities as a whole, our culture, the different cultures. And so we'll say, no, that's not good, that's not bad. I'm not saying what you should believe. I'm saying you as an individual, as the head of your family, if you want to use those terms, say, what are you committed to? And if my church or my ministry or myself as a leader can be a guide to point you in the direction, then I think that all of these elements will work together to give us the healing that we need. Because in that case, Lorena needed to find peace and rest of that. She didn't need to be condemned or condescended for whatever she was experiencing. She needed to find that wholeness and that healing.
Now, question for Lorena. Lorena, had you told the story before? Antes de esta iniciativa, ¿tú habías platicado esa historia a alguien?
No, para nada. De hecho, leer el libro y ser parte de este proyecto fue lo que trajo a mi memoria esta y otras historias que tuve relacionadas con curanderas y todo eso. Entonces, esta fue con la que mejor me relacioné, porque yo creo porque viene de ese momento de la inocencia, ¿no? En que por no obedecer una vez, pues te pasa de todo. Y por eso decidí contar esta historia. Pero nunca la había contado.
Pues muchísimas gracias, Lorena, que fue una entretenida y asombrante. Y
que muchos nos vimos reflejados en ella.
Porque es cementerio, haciendo travesuras, brincando para ir para acá, disturbing, the folks that have gone to a better life. ¿Quién hemos hecho eso? Por pronto, cuando estamos hablando de alguien en nuestra propia casa, pues a veces, pues, que oyes ruidos en la noche o eso y lo otro, pues, y eso, pues, obviamente sí nos da pesadillas, nos da, pues, cosas de qué pensar, pero muchísimas gracias por esa bonita historia. Yo sé que muchas personas de las que van a venir a escucharte el próximo viernes van a poder escuchar toda la historia y van a poder identificar. They'll be able to identify with you because these are stories, these are rituals, these are costumbres, cultural traditions that we grew up with, that your story will resonate with us. So thank you once again. We'd love to invite you to be backstage in the green room. We're going to invite you más al ratito para que digas unas últimas palabras, pero muchísimas gracias, Lorena, que fue un orgullo y un placer de verte en la clase y obviamente verte desarrollar esa historia. It's so amazing to have these different stories being told, and like I was just telling her, this story, it just how many of us we go religiously to go visit our grandmother that passed away, our loved one that passed away, and we go there. No vamos like el papá y la mamá, van todos, toda la familia. So we go there, and I mean, what she was saying, bouncing around here and there, it's like that's what we do as kids. But anyway, this is truly a wonderful opportunity for me, not just as an instructor of Primer Borrador, but to really hear them really formulate the story, to be able to. I'm glad you asked the question. Have you told the story before? Because a lot of us don't get that opportunity to share the story. That is why it's so important for these programs that Alley Theater is putting out into the community. It's so important because it gives us, the community, an opportunity to compartir, to share something that relates to us, that we know. Otherwise, it gets lost. These stories will get lost and never get told to our kids or our grandkids and whatnot.
So. And what's interesting is that this story is being told, people who live them and people who tell them. I'm not sure if that's the case of Lorena or any of the other authors who we're going to introduce. They might think, ¿a quién le va a importar? And all of a sudden, it's because they resonate, because there are many elements in our culture that are shared. Hemos crecido en la misma cultura, tenemos las mismas usanzas, tenemos la misma cultura. A todos desde chiquito nos llevaron al panteón. And again, I go back to how dramatic it is for a child. Not dramatic in a bad way, especially if you go with your primos or primas, entonces te pones a brincar. But it is very impactful because, again, in our countries, they are works of art.
Yes,
it's very impressive
and very sacred,
At the same time.
So, and I completely loved the comments that Blanca Garza and Susan Morales shared with us, because it's really important to be able to early on figure out the balance, like she's talking about commitment and talking about the faith. I mean, to be able to have that as someone in like she's at the head of household, you as a parent need to figure out what that looks like for for your kids, to give them some direction, to give them and say it's okay that we could talk about these cultures and things, because they're very true to us. We should not be ashamed of ourselves. And yes, because you know what, a lot of people that I've spoke with throughout the years in conversations like this have shared the fact that they left the church because they didn't feel welcome, they didn't feel respected, they didn't feel this and that. And so
yeah, no, I think that I believe things are evolving. Yes. I think that the pandemic had a lot to do with it, because now we are here. Now, again, there's more openness, and therefore there's more confidence in telling these stories, in sharing them, and in finding out that we're not alone. Sometimes, many of us have experienced it.
Well, just very quickly on this, and we can invite our next guest. But in the Primer Borrador residency, all the students were sitting down. And then there was a point where I said, someone was talking about a story, and everybody would turn, that happened to me, that happened to me. So it was relatable to everybody. Every story was related to everybody. Maybe not the banana healer, but most everything about the panteon and things like that. But it was a different instrument.
Mind you, if it's not a banana, it's un hilito con saliva roja. If it's not that, it's un huevo. If it's not that, it's el sage. I mean...
Exactamente. So it was just beautiful to be able to to experience these wonderful stories. And also I was like, man, that happened to me. That happened to me. So folks, all of you out there in our virtual mundo aquí in Houston and from wherever that you're tuning in, please, I ask you to please join us next Friday, September the 16th at 7 p.m. at Alley Theater. It will be in the Newhouse Theater in downtown 615 Texas Avenue. We invite you to come and listen to 12 of these stories. We will be doing, this is going to be the kickoff for National Hispanic Heritage Month. There'll be a dance, there'll be food, there'll be a reception, and more importantly, it'll give you an opportunity to also talk to these students and ask them how they enjoyed this Primer Borrador, this residency, because you may be the next person in our class with an opportunity to share your culture, your traditions with not just with me in the classroom, but also with our community. So without any further ado, I'd like to introduce our next Primer Borrador participant. She's also a teacher, and her story is amazing. And I don't want to say the name of the story. I'm going to ask her to go ahead and say it. But please help me welcome Miss Karina Peña.
Hello.
Bienvenida.
Hola.
¿Cómo estás, Karina? ¿Todo bien?
Muy bien, muy emocionada de estar aquí con ustedes hoy.
Pues por fin se hizo desde todo el verano que estábamos en las clases. Dijimos, ya se va a acercar el día donde vamos a poder platicar de nuestras historias y ya se llegó. Pues bienvenida nuevamente aquí a Cuentos y Charlas, donde estamos hablando sobre nuestra última experiencia basado en el libro de Rodolfo Anayas, Bless Me Ultima. So, platícanos.
¿Quién es Karina? Y platícanos un poquito acerca de tu historia.
Perfecto. So, I'm glad to be here. A little bit about me. I am an individual that loves giving back to my community. So one of the things I do on a daily basis is that I give back to my students, to my teachers, to my staff, and to my families. I've been doing that since I was a young age, and so I'm very blessed that now I can finally do it for a living. So I'm very proud of that. I'm also a very proud daughter of two wonderful parents. And that's why the story is called Hecho en México, because esos son raíces de mis papás y mi creencia con ellos.
Bueno, y platícanos un poquito acerca de la historia que tú compartiste. I thought your story was very cultural, and even though it didn't have the elements of natural healing or a herbal healing or a curandera, I thought it was very similar to that of the protagonist of Bless Me Ultima. And the reason is because he was torn just like we were torn in terms of your language, the language that you were brought up speaking, when you went to school, and how it transformed as you grew up.
Yes. So one of the things is, thank you, Blanca, because I know Blanca was a big help for that when I was writing my story. I was very torn of, okay, what do I talk about? What I write about? But for me, I guess with the story and Bless Me Ultima, a lot of relation was that identity. And it was because en mi casa hablábamos español y mi papá era muy estricto de eso y yo no entendía, le dije, ¿por qué? ¿Por qué quieres que siempre hable español? Pero then from there, as I got older, I realized that it was such a blessing to know Spanish and to understand it and to still keep it with me. And I know I grew up a lot of identity, like, okay, do I speak Spanish? Do I speak English? And being criticized in both languages. I think, Lisa, you don't speak very well in English, no hablas muy bien en español, pero it was just that identity of being torn both ways and trying to find, okay, do I speak Spanish or do I speak English? But I didn't realize that my dad was just molding me to prepare me that, yeah, I might not be good at both languages, but at least I know two languages. And now it's become such a blessing for me that I'm very proud that I am able to help so many people and so many families because I'm able to know those two languages.
And so you were struggling, again, just like the little boy in the book, you were struggling with unos quieren llevarte a un camino, unos quieren que seas una cosa, otros quieren que seas otra cosa, y de repente tú no sabes quién eres, qué eres y a dónde vas, o quién eres, o para qué eres buena. Because you are not, all of a sudden you didn't feel you were good enough in English, and then, but in Mexico or in predominantly Spanish-speaking environments, you were not, you didn't sound like them, right? So,
Yes, exactly.
and it didn't take, again, I don't want to give away your story, but it wasn't, even when you were starting your master's, even when you were a graduate student, you were still struggling.
Yes. I think that was my biggest struggle, that I realized, like, oh wow, like I can't believe even at such a older age, like this is still becoming an issue, being confronted about those barriers that I was still going through, and bringing me back to my childhood, and triggering me to, like, wow, I didn't realize this is affecting me so much.
Okay, and that, Karina, there are many Karinas out there. I'm really interested in the perspective of our two experts, in Susie and Blanca, because I mean, I think that's, I think there are many, many Karinas out there who struggle with the same issue.
Right.
Who wants to take it?
I'll go for a little bit. I think, yes, you're absolutely correct. This is an issue that plagues our communities. A lot of times, our young people and even into adulthood, live with a lot of shame around maybe their culture, maybe they have an accent, maybe there's just this or that, because they weren't accepted, like Karina mentions in her story, in either culture, not fully. Like there was always something off. But and it takes a long time to process those things, many times. En nuestras comunidades muchas veces hay mucha vergüenza, porque venimos, o sea, porque de repente si tienen un acento, o si o en inglés o en español o los dos, o sea, regresas a México, ya no es lo mismo. So it's there's work that you have to do around that to feel, and for Karina, she went to school, studied, and it was still with her. So it took, finally, like, I mean, I'm not going to give away your whole story, but just your own process to get through a lot of that shame. And that's, it relates completely to the story, in for Antonio in Bless Me Ultima, because he struggles with those same things as well. A feeling of belonging, like you don't belong here, you don't belong there, and so that kind of stays with us. And we have to work that out. There's always this, kind of push and pull. And we have to come to terms that we can belong in both. We can belong here and there. It's okay. So yes, there's definitely a lot of that we as a community have to work through. And in this coming of age story for Antonio, he struggled with it and he had to work through it. And I think all of us in different ways struggle with that, and how we process it. It just depends on a lot of variance. But for you had your family that was always there, your parents, your father, who was, your rock in a way, telling you keep going, and this is, it's a good thing. So
Yeah.
So question for Susie. Susie, what do you tell children like Karina? What do you tell children who belong to your children's ministry who are struggling with this identity crisis?
Mm-hmm. Well, identity is a big problem our entirety of our life. The difference is that when children are young, that's when it's forming. And so they start hearing these messages of I don't belong, or the messages of empowerment. And I think as community leaders in the church or whatever sector we're in, when we put minorities, Latinos in positions of leadership and power, that is what's going to speak to our children. So Karina, the courage to tell your story is also one of those models that serves, and that's just the beginning. And a lot of us, as we're coming into this country, immigrants, first generation, second generation, we're still building wealth. We're working in predominantly Anglo businesses. I can say that for my church. My church it's a global church, and here in the United States, we only represent 2% of the Latino population. And so for me, it has become being that voice from other Latinos and saying, hey, you know what? We're not the object of the mission. Because a lot of times that's how we're viewed. Let's help. Let's give them these handouts. And you know what? A lot of us have come here and we've had those struggles. I have had the same struggles as Karina, as going back and code switching. But you know what? Now we are part of this society. Now we have something to say. And so that's why I love this panel, because we have an opportunity to showcase our talents and let others, not only our children, hear our stories, but other children and other adults who are not part of our culture hear our stories. And so that's how the healing can begin, where then, you know what, the mission really becomes helping others and not objects, and seeing what we could do for our own benefit. And so, Karina, I just think that this is a big step for even more wonderful things for us as Latinos.
You know, and I think this is another one of those that is a shared story, because for all of us who were brought up speaking two languages, or who were born into a Spanish language household, a todos nos ha pasado, and I think there has been a pivotal moment in our lives when you realize that it needs to stop bothering you. I think it's fascinating if we were to identify when was it? What was the event that made you realize, ya basta? Ya no, I can't continue feeling uncomfortable about the fact that I have an accent. I can't. So, I mean, I think it's really fascinating, but thank you, Karina, for sharing your story, because I think it's all of our stories.
Well, one thing that I want to say, perdón. Sorry, were you going to say something, Karina?
No, I mean, it's true. And I think that's important that I came with that conclusion once I start applying to jobs and getting the career that I'm in, that what a fortunate it is.
That you realize it's a superpower, because it is a superpower. And I really need to say it. And thank you to Valdebar for giving us this forum to say it. It's like a cape. It's a superpower. But sometimes, especially when you're little, it's a very heavy cape that you wish you didn't carry.
Well, you know, like that scene in Selena, when el papá de Selena goes, they have to be twice as good, you know, porque, you know, if we speak Spanish, it's not perfect. So if we go to Mexico, if we start, it's different. They're gonna react to it very different. So, ni mexicanos, o de cualquier país que seas, ni somos muy mexicanos, ni somos muy de Estados Unidos, because we are caught in between there. And so that has its own challenges and comes with its own beliefs. And obviously, you know, all those difficulties that you experienced. But certainly, I know a lot of folks that it's just in their household, they were not allowed to speak Spanish, and they regret it now, and they are taking classes. But you know what? It becomes, they have an accent, which is so different from the folks where the parents les inculcaron que hablaran español desde chiquitos y crecen teniendo ningún acento, ni en inglés ni en español, y lo pueden hablar como lo puedo hablar yo, you know, and switch back and forth. A lot of us also do this, part of our culture, since it's English. So, but Karina, fue un placer, and I'm going to tell you, I don't know if you mentioned the title of your story. Can you say it, please?
Hecho en México.
Hecho en México. Hecho en México. So, amigos from our virtual world out there, please, you are welcome to come. We're inviting you right now to come and join us next Friday at 7 o'clock. At 7 p.m., we're going to start. We're going to have the doors open at 6 o'clock, so you can start arriving at 6 o'clock. We're going to have a wonderful show where we're going to hear from 12 Primer Borrador participants, where they share their stories inspired by Rodolfo Anaya's wonderful celebrated book, Bless Me Ultima, that talks about a young boy and the dilemma that he has in moral independence and making a decision after he experiences all the wonderfulness that La Grande, they call her La Grande, Ultima, shares with him when she comes back into his life, una curandera. So you're going to be able to hear this story and all of the other wonderful stories that you have heard mentioned from our Primer Borrador panels that were on tonight. So thank you so much, Karina. Now we are going to go to our next. We invite you to stay backstage in our green room, and we'll invite you momentarily towards the end of the show. But qué impresionante y las historias que they just resonate, and thank you for everybody that's talking about how this forum. You know, I would like to thank Alley Theater, Education and Community Engagement, the Zocalo Initiative, for being able to make it available to create these signature programs where we now have a platform que podemos hablar en inglés y español, compartir las historias. So it's a wonderful place in history right now. It's a wonderful place to be here, to be able to witness all these wonderful movements that the whole, not just the city, but the whole country is having. And obviously I am blessed to be bendecido de estar trabajando en Alley Theater, el Teatro Alley, y poder traerles a cada uno de ustedes esta oportunidad, o sea, para que participen en el primer borrador o que sean parte de esta charla y que contribuyen en sus opiniones, porque es muy importante. This is our way of being able to document and immortalize our stories so that other generations can be able to witness them. And if for whatever reason, folks, you did not get a chance to see the whole broadcast, we will be keeping it on Facebook, and you'll be able to see it and invite your friends to come and see the rebroadcast of it. So without any further ado, ¿algo que quieras agregar?
No, pues gracias a Lali, porque todo esto, these stories that are getting generated now have a platform. These stories are here to stay, to be shared. And I'm glad that we were able to get them out of our chest, especially for the writers who so generously shared those stories.
They're so therapeutic. Y ahorita vamos a hablar con Blanca Garza, who has talked to us about how therapeutic it is to release and be able to share something without any guilt, without any shame, and without, and with respect as you start telling the story. Well, nuestra próxima primer participante es una niña. She's a young person. She's 11 years old. She's in 6th grade. Acaba de cumplir 11 años, and she is in 6th grade. And she is doing, we'll ask her a little bit about her first draft, but please help me welcome Camila Robles. Bienvenida, Camila, ¿cómo estás?
I'm doing really good. Thank you for asking.
Awesome. I just love to hear your voice. This is what you are, one of my favorite students. You always were there on time. You were always so eager. I just wanted to let everybody know that having a young person with such enthusiasm and such passion for telling stories, and it's just amazing to have been your professor for this storytelling residency. Muchísimas gracias. Glad that you can join us.
Camila, tell us a little bit about yourself. How old are you? And tell us what is the title of your story.
My name is Camila. I'm 11 years old, and my story is called The Day I Thought My Grandma Was a Witch.
Okay, so that's a provocative title. Yeah, that's an eye catcher. Tell us a little bit about your story.
Well, my sister gets sick, and I'm the one that gets my other little sister sick. So, sorry. Let me rephrase that.
Take 2, action.
Yes, my middle sister, Emma, she gets sick, and when she throws up, I get so afraid of throwing up that I start screaming in the car, and I scare the baby sister, Lucia. And during the whole trip on our way to Vallehermoso to visit a family member, she is afraid of everyone and everything, and I get her sick. And the reason I want to make this story is because that I feel sorry for her if I was not so overreactive about the way I scream when my sister was throwing up or whatever. Um, that would have been a whole difference, but maybe that made her stronger, and that did too, and that made a closer bond with me and my sisters and my parents and my abuela too, because I got so scared the first time I went to her job and I saw the egg, and I'm like, what is she doing? And I'm
Let me stop you right there. I mean, Camila, you're telling us such a wonderful story. Let me just kind of recap because I don't want you to give up all the story because this is a brilliant, amazing story, and I want the folks to kind of join us next Friday to hear the entire story. But what you're saying is obviously her story is about a susto. You know, she witnessed something, and like she said, she overreacted. How many of us are so dramatic? I know I am. And so she screamed and she overreacted, and it caused your little sister to get scared, right?
yeah.
So okay, so let me ask you something, Camila. Whenever you were thinking about the story, was this the first story that came to mind, or were you thinking of other stories to write?
I was thinking about that. I think it was the first thing that came into my mind because as I was reading Bless Me Ultima, like Ultima heals the family with the egg and herbal medicine and stuff. So I immediately got that idea because I remember this awkward day where I asked my grandma, I think in a very rude way, "Are you a witch? ¿Es una bruja? Tita? Tita es una
Well, this kind of it kind of this the importance of our literature, the importance of literature. You know, it's we were able to see witness these students read the book, and obviously this particular scene connected with Camila, and it inspired her to write the story. So this is wonderful, Camila. I know you had other choices, but yes, I appreciate you telling us that it was that you read the book, you read that specific scene donde Ultima está rezando y sacándole los espíritus y todo lo malo con el huevo. So, and that kind of inspired you to be able to talk about this. So this is great. Um, what advice? What advice would you give other students, other storytellers, other actors? Because I know you are inspiring actors. What advice would you give to them about this journey that you took during the Primer Borrador storytelling residency?
Maybe like first of all, don't scream so loudly. And second of all, maybe don't judge a book by its cover, especially Tita. She had a whole different side of her. I didn't even know she was all that, but it was very cool and scary and awkward to see her work.
So
So
you're talking about what you witnessing your grandmother doing,
yes.
the ritual, the cultural ritual is what you're talking about. And I'm going to stop you there because I want I want that to be revealed when we have you at a theater. Telling your story, but my question, let me be a little bit more specific. You, as a young aspiring actor, taking this class, you know the experience that you had. What advice would you give other students that also want to be actors, that also want to take writing courses? What advice would you give them, or recommendation would you give them about this class?
Maybe just like believe in yourself, and if you don't know something, just ask someone else and something will come up. Because I had a very hard time writing it, but once I sat down with Papi, my dad, um, he helped me break down the things that I wanted to write in my story, and that helped a lot. So, like, get guidance from someone. Yeah.
Well, Camila, I want to talk to your parents because I want to ask them what are they giving you to give you such a You're very assured, you're very mature, and you have a great facilidad de palabra. I wish I would have spoken half as good as you speak when I was 11.
Well,
Congratulations.
let me just share something that Officer Jesus Robles, el papá, took Primer Borrador class with Camila. And that I can tell you that right now. I don't know if Officer Robles is in there or the mom is in there.
Yes, mommy.
Robles. If you want to just scooch on in and we have some questions for you. ¿Cómo estás, Donakin?
Muy bien, gracias.
Qué linda su niña, qué segura, qué madura, qué tremenda confianza tiene para tener 11 años. So, lo que quiera que esté haciendo, sígalo haciendo, porque si así habla de 11 años, no me imagino cuando tenga 20.
Sí, ojalá y se sepa defender igualmente cuando tenga los 20. Pero sí, ella es súper madura y su papá y yo siempre le inculcamos a que to believe in herself, que cree en sí misma y que sea una buena persona, que le eche ganas a la escuela y a todo lo que quiera hacer.
Emma paint my nails. Oh my God.
Ahí tienes otra niña.
Ay, sorry, son 3 otras niñas.
No, a ver, Blanca Garza, ¿qué observaciones has tenido? Porque tú también fuiste parte del proceso del Primer Borrador. ¿Qué observaciones puedes decir sobre Camila?
Sí, no, te quiero felicitar, Camila, porque cuando leí la historia, yo no sabía que era una niña de 11 años que escribió esta historia, porque la hiciste súper, súper bien. Y sí, unos temas que salieron, o sea, lo bonito es the community coming together and healing also. Because in this instance, of course, you're writing this story about your grandmother, de tu abuelita, estás escribiendo esta historia y de la experiencia que tuviste con ella, pero but what also comes across is like how close knit your family is and how important all of those elements are in your development, in your healing, in your upbringing, and the same for your sister. So it's like the whole family came together, the abuela, your parents, your siblings, all of that. So that's part of what this healing process certainly brings up.
And I assure you, Abuela will be at the performance.
Of course, she's the backbone of your story.
Yes.
Exactly. She's the inspiration for your story. So, well, how lovely. Susie, chime in here. I'd like to hear your perspective on a young person like Camila, taking this class, telling her story, being so confident, and then the parents' role in her life to being right there, very supportive.
I could just say my heart just skips because all the elements are present for Camila to be successful. And no matter what area she wants to, her career to take off, if she wants to continue to be a writer, a presenter. I know at her age, I took my first speech class, and it has taken me years to develop that because to some extent, I didn't have that support that I'm seeing and witnessing, and we're all witnessing. And so congratulations, because it takes a village. It really does. And so when the parents are involved, when the parents are taking the time to assist their child, then there's no limit. I know, Camila, it's in you. You had the guidance of your dad, your mom to help this writing to just evolve. And so the other thing that came to mind for me was, as I was listening to you tell your story, I just saw reliving my work experience and having the kids run up to me and just blah, 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 telling me their stories, and then I think about, how much kids have to say. They have thoughts, they have opinions, they have creativity. And if we as adults could just slow down and celebrate those experiences. And the reason why she was able to create this wonderful writing piece was because she took the elements of her experience, which she had seen her family do time and time, maybe even conversations that maybe mom and dad and grandma didn't even know she was aware. But guess what? She was picking up on it. And or where she was part of the story. And so all of this is just coming together to just really, truly make a successful home environment that produces and creates success. And success is measured on so many levels. So congratulations, Mom and Dad. That is at my heart. Families learning together. It's just the responsibility of us. We have our teachers that support, but man, we need the parents involved. So I'm just, my heart just skips.
Yeah, it's very inspiring to listen to her.
It is. It was actually kind of intimidating in the class because when I heard the voice, I'm like,
Who's
did
that?
that come from this little pint-sized young person? And you know, and it really actually perked a lot of people, a lot of the other participants, you know, to be able to bring their A game, because here they had this young person that was telling an amazing story with this amazing vocabulary, with, ya lo dijimos varias veces, con esa confianza en sí misma. Entonces, felicidades, Camila, felicidades papá y mamá por criar a una niña con tanto deseo, tanta pasión y tanto
talento.
Tanto talento, vaya. Y hoy, ya ahorita la gente allí en el Teatro Ali te está viendo, mija, te está viendo, porque ya sabe que para la otra producción te vamos a llamar, ¿eh? Te vamos a llamar porque sabemos que tienes un buen talento y un grande talento, y obviamente eres parte de nuestra comunidad y tenemos que celebrarte. Thank you again, Mom and Dad. We're going to ask you to be backstage for a moment. We're going to bring our last Primer Borrador participant, and then we are going to be able to get everybody back there and let everybody know when we're going to have the Cuentos y Charlas event, which is next Friday. We'll give you more details. But el día de hoy, right now, what we're about to do is we're going to bring in our last participant, but not the least, the last participant that's going to be part of our Cuentos y Charlas. We do have 12 participants that are going to be telling the story next week. But tonight we're going to have 5 folks that were able to come and share their experiences with us. And up next is a wonderful person who is actually, you know, I'm honored to call her my sister. We went to school together, so I've been with her for many years and know her family well, and she's got a very endearing, emotional story. And she shared with me that she never had a platform to be able to share this, to talk about her brother, and she'll tell a little bit more about it. Please help me welcome my hermosa amiga y comadre, y bueno, todo lo que tú quieras, Miss Blanca Beltrán. Bienvenida, Blanca.
Hola, ¿cómo están todos?
Bien, aquí nomás. Muchísimas gracias por estar aquí con nosotros esta noche. Y bueno, pues I kind of was dreading to be able to talk about this because it's just such an endearing story. It touched so many people that have heard it so far in the classroom. And I'm going to throw it to Claudia to talk a little bit more and to ask you a couple of questions about your story.
Platícanos quién eres, Blanca. Platícanos el nombre de tu historia, and in a nutshell, what's it about?
Yeah, so thank you so much for letting me be part of this platform. Not going to lie, I really was hesitant because it's a very personal story. And when I even started thinking of what dialogue I was going to share, I immediately got teared up. The name of the story, my name is Blanca Beltran, and I'm Houstonian. Grew up in the East End, and the arts is my love, you know, for giving back in the community. And I've always known since a kid that I was going to do something of giving back. So it was just very natural that Padre Mad ended in my pathway at University of Houston. And here we are just trying to make an impact by doing things like this. So thank you, Alley Theater, for allowing us to continue doing the work. So, but my story, the name is The Last Gathering. So I called it that because it's the last time that I saw my little brother. He passed away at the age of 23. And it's never shared the story before. It was basically, I'm not going to share all of it, but my story is basically based on the fact that we don't know what tomorrow brings, right? So I wanted to be able to share the story of the last time that I spent time with my brother. And it was after his wedding. And I hadn't seen him in a while because, you know, all that, the festivities and honeymoon and so forth. And it was our first time to be able to get together, and it was just beautiful. My brother was just the most beautiful soul. I mean, I'm not just saying it because it's my brother, but oh my goodness, I'm getting emotional. But I wanted to share the story because I think it's so important, because I think so many people take things for granted, take time for granted, take people for granted. And I wanted to be able to share with people because tomorrow's not promised. So enjoy your loved ones on as much as you can. Be present in the moment. So that's the biggest message. I don't want to share too much of the story because I really want to share it on stage at the Alley Theater for everybody to come in. But that's just kind of a little cliff note version of it. So
how did the book, how did Les Mi Ultima, how did that play a part in inspiring you to tell this particular story about the loss of your brother?
I think for me, it's the healing part, because we talk, hearing all these stories. And by the way, what acts to follow? I had to follow all those beautiful stories. Like, oh my gosh, no pressure. But so the curanderas, in terms of the healing. So I had my own curandera at home to this day. And I feel like she shared, like curando con el huevo, like my kids, whenever they were sick, they reached out to me and said, Mami, huevo, por favor, huevo, I don't feel good. Can you please do the huevo on me? So I feel like I connected to it because the curanderas that my mom has introduced me to, dealing with other things that I've experienced in life, it was a continual. So if anytime that I feel heavy or emotionally sad or just stressed or whatever that feels like, my mom always steps in and me cura con un huevo. Even to this day at 53, she still comes over to curarme con el huevo. So that's where the connection came in with the story about my brother and about the importance of family, the importance of being present and just kind of believing in something outside bigger than you.
And so you had never shared the story. Had you ever written about it? Had you ever told it in a public forum like this one?
No. The people who know me know that I lost my little brother. But that's not something I bring up in a conversation when I meet somebody. It's only when I'm really close to somebody and we talk about family and then I mention my brother. So no, I never shared it just because it's so personal. It's very deep. It's emotional. It's it's already been 27 years. Yeah.
So was it a catharsis for you? Did it make you somehow, the fact that you're able to tell the story, has it brought some healing? Has it brought some comfort?
Yeah, it does, because, I feel like it's so important. Like, my kids never got to meet my brother. And the way I keep his spirit alive is by sharing stories about my brother, about sharing photos of my brother. I don't want anybody to forget my little brother. I think it's important for us to continue sharing stories like this because, we just need to remember. We need to be reminded of what's valuable in our life, and that's family, that's love, unconditional love, and it's just, being the key thing that always came to mind is being present. And I know that the story, there was this, like I really resonated with getting a story as well on so many levels, just like all of us. And el susto, like all these different things that we talked about in terms of the book being relatable, all these things I feel like we've all experienced to some degree. And so for me, sharing about my brother, I think it was important just because in honoring the dead, right, and honoring our loved ones and not forgetting them. And to me, I feel like it's so important to continue to bring the name up, to share to others, because if we don't, I feel like, I don't know, I just always feel like to me, I was so grateful that I had 23 years, beautiful years with my brother. I know not everybody feels that way with certain people in their lives. And I know that I was so honored. God gave me 23 years and I'm so forever grateful for that. So I want to, yes, it's sad because I miss him, obviously. That's why I got teary-eyed. But I think, through this process of writing, I think of him often, and I have pictures of him when I leave for work. That's the last picture I see on my way out. when I come home, he's the first person I see when I walk in. You know, it's always like I'm here for you kind of, you know, just in terms of like the representation of his photo. So
He's very much alive.
yes,
If
exactly.
we think of it, he's very much alive because he's there with you all the time. When you leave from work, when you come back home. And so he must have instilled some values in you. The fact that he was even though he was your younger brother, right?
Right.
He left a lot in you.
He did, with all of us. Anybody who knew him or reflect on him. I was talking to a girlfriend of mine today, and she was telling me that I remember when he danced with me, because I guess nobody asked her to dance or something. And I remember your little brother asked me to dance, and he's such a great dancer. I go, oh yeah. She goes, and he had the best laugh. I go, yep. He had the best laugh. He gave the best hugs. Just when you see somebody walk in and they just bring light to them, that was him. And I feel like I want to continue to share his story, because to me, I feel like that spirit will continue, because he was such a beautiful soul.
So I want to pitch it to Blanca. Blanca, how important is for cases and for stories like the one that Blanca is sharing? How important is it in terms of the healing process to be able to tell the story, to be able to share it the way she's doing it right now?
Right. Yes, absolutely. Healing comes in a lot of different ways, and it's over time. It's not okay, one thing and then it's done. It's definitely a process, and I think what Blanca is doing is also like weaving this process that she has gone through with Primer Borrador into part of her, definitely her healing process. And that's, a vehicle, I guess, for definitely healing is storytelling, whether it's journaling, whether it's spoken word, writing a book. I mean, there's just so many ways to go through that grieving process and that growth. So I mean, and we're witnessing it across the board in all of the stories that are told. Some of them are a loss that we grieve. Some of it is physical pain. Some of it is there's different things that we experience. And certainly, this process is helping people in all kinds of ways to connect and to weave our stories into this beautiful kind of mosaic.
Susie Morales, give us your perspective.
Yeah, Antonio touches a lot on theodicy, the problem of suffering. I mean, we're here, we suffer, we experience some very tragic things. And so Antonio has those questions of the meaning of all this and justice. And so when we see others suffering, our initial instinct is to as well want to comfort and be there for that person. And that's what makes us human. And also to understand what makes us human is the physical aspect, and then there's the soul, and then that's the beauty, right? When we lose someone, we lose that physical body, and whether they are in an urn as ashes or underground, the respect and the relationship we have is because they were once connected to us as humans. But then the beauty of it is that their soul is eternal. So we don't have all the answers, we don't know everything, but to understand that we are all connected and part of one another. And so Blanca, as you continue to grieve for your brother and keep him alive, though he cannot be here physically with us, but he is alive in our hearts. And that, I think, to me, is the beauty of being a Christian, because that's the promise that we have, that one day we all will be resurrected, and we all will be united. And that brings us hope and joy to be able to celebrate. And so sometimes, because death is such a hard topic, we do steer away from it, or maybe don't work through our emotions. But to me, death is a part, and in our tradition, the fact that we go to cemeteries and visit our loved ones and make it a part, I think so much more in the Latin American countries, not so much here. But I know when I go back home to Guatemala, we go visit everyone, and we're all a part of that. And I think that that's a component that sometimes we miss here, because it's not part of our culture. But that doesn't mean it doesn't have to be. But all of those elements are part of that healing process. And as a community support systems, then we're able to continue to. And the more that we acknowledge that death is part of our life, there's beauty that comes out of it too, even though it hurts.
Well, Susie, thank you for sharing your perspective. Thank you to the rest of the writers, of the authors who shared the story. This was a little probadita, right, Valde?
Exactly. So we are so excited to be able to have this Cuentos y Charlas this evening, and to be able to feature some of the upcoming writers that will be performing their stories at the Alley Theater next Friday. To me, it's, when you start a resident, we start a class, and then the students come in and they don't know what to expect, and all of a sudden you fast forward, a couple of months, and boom, already we're there. The stories are realized. They're getting up there con confidence. They're making you laugh. They're making you cry. They're making you angry. They're making you happy. And that is what is going to culminate next Friday. And we're so excited. I would like to invite at this moment, first of all, Claudia, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Claudia, for co-hosting with me and really helping me guide the conversation. Thank you to Susie Morales and Blanca Garza for giving us your insight and your expertise on these conversations and stories that come from a book that went to a movie, and now they're part of these students realizing and being inspired by telling their story. I'd like to take this opportunity to invite all of the Primer Borrador participants for any last words that they might have in 10 seconds or less. We'll go ahead and start from the top. We'll go ahead and start with Karina. Karina, I see that you have your little one there.
Yes.
Any last words that you would say to us? Hola, ¿cómo estás, preciosa?
So a lot of advice is just to go back to con tus raíces and get to know like your upbringing and having that relationship and getting to know a lot about your traditions.
Muchísimas gracias, Karina. Lorenita, ¿qué consejos o qué últimos pensamientos nos puedes decir?
Bueno, mi consejo es que si tienes una historia, la escribas y encuentres la manera de compartirla con otras personas, porque siempre va alguien que se conecte con tu historia y a esta persona le puedes ayudar muchísimo en alguna área en la que lo necesite.
Gracias.
Gracias. Y Josie, seguimos con Josie. Any advice, any last thoughts, amiga?
Oh.
Josie.
Your microphone, I think you have your microphone off, Mika?
Okay, thank you. I hope that one of our stories is able to strike a chord within you, within our audience, and have them think about their culture and be closer to their family, and keep it going and pass it down to their children.
Thank you so much. And then we go next to Blanca Beltran.
I mean, the only thing I'd like to say is, just be present in the moment and really just know that tomorrow's not promised. So just go out there and be the best version of yourself, be giving of yourself, be loving of yourself and to others.
Muchísimas gracias. Susie.
So I would just like to say, as we're writing our stories, and sometimes there's healing in this, just to remember that our children are not our counselors. Our children do not need to bear the burden of our pain. While they can hear it, and it's definitely okay to tell stories, I think it's just important to remember that, so that they can be children and feel free and continue to build experiences so they can write their own stories.
Oh. Great advice. Thank you, Susie. And last but not least, Blanca Garza.
I just want to, I think this is an amazing opportunity that we have here Just we need to keep telling our stories and getting them out there and having our voices heard. And this has been an amazing has been in the past and continues to be an amazing platform for connection, for growth, for processing, for healing. And I'm honored to be here. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And actually, not last, but yes, Claudia.
Últimas palabras.
Oh,
Camila,
Camila,
perdón,
mira, es que
Camila.
estaba ansiosa, yo sabía que faltaba Camilita. Camila, ¿qué consejos nos puedes dar? Any last thoughts?
I cannot
Yo sabía
wait.
que estabas ahí, ¿eh?
I'm so excited and I can't wait to tell my story and hopefully, oh hi Tita, and I can't wait to tell my story and maybe it'll change people's minds and don't scream so loudly. Don't scream so loudly.
And I'm certain it will, Camila. It was an honor to have you in my class, and it's going to be an honor to see you go up on that stage and compartir tu historia.
Thank you.
Did you accept it? Okay. Claudia, any last words?
Just that I can't wait to meet all of you. I mean, it was great to meet you. It was great to meet you on video, but I can't wait to be present at the event that is going to be taking place on the 16th of September at
Alley Theater, and it's going to be at 7 o'clock. And it's going to be a reception and a dance, and we're going to have some musical acts, and it's going to be truly a celebration of our community with El Grano. The center stage is going to be our story. So please tell your friends. Please share this with your family and friends. You could go to alleytheater.org/Ultima to register to make sure you get your tickets. We're going to be in the New House Theater, and it's going to be an exciting opportunity. We're going to be making history by coming and sharing these wonderful stories in 2022. Estoy súper emocionado. I would like to take this opportunity to thank Alley Theater, the education and community engagement team, the wonderful team that I work with, and the Zócalo Advisory Committee and the Steering Committee, and all of the production and all the different departments at Alley Theater who have continuously supported our community, have supported the Latino arts, have supported programs like this, like Cuentos y Charlas. Thank you so much to Mr. Dean Glatton and Rob Melrose, who are our managing director and the artistic director at Alley Theater, for everything that you have done to get this initiative going, to get the El Zócalo initiative going and started. Kathy Bencivenga and Mary Sutton, who were the pioneers. They were actually the pioneers of El Zócalo initiative. Thank you to each and every one of you. And our wonderful production director, Emily Frassi, thank you so much for always coming on board and facilitating these wonderful productions and platforms for our community. Without any further ado, inviting you next Friday, September the 16th at 7 p.m., 1615 Texas Avenue, Houston, downtown, in the New House Theater at Alley Theater. We look forward to seeing you. Allí nos vemos.